Three shapes stand in silhouette: a grey wolf, a striped hunter from Tasmania, a dog asleep beside a door. One is a marsupial. One never left the wild. One entered human life and never walked back out. All three share a body evolution keeps rebuilding: a long muzzle, long legs, and senses made to search across distance. A dog-like hunter, but one of them was never a dog. Why does evolution keep returning to this shape? The dog-like hunter is not a species. It is a pattern, a set of tools evolution has assembled more than once. A long muzzle creates space for a powerful scent system. Long legs cover ground efficiently. Feet that land on the toes add spring and traction. Non-retractile claws grip the surface rather than folding away for a silent climb. In many canids, the whole body favors sustained travel over one explosive burst. Most cats lean toward a different strategy: creep close, then release stored power in one short attack. Many canids lean toward persistence: keep moving until distance stops protecting the prey. Neither rule is absolute, but the contrast helps explain two very different predatory tendencies. Rewind roughly 40 million years to woodlands in North America and you find the earliest canids. They do not look like wolves. Some are barely larger than a house cat, quick and low to the ground. From this early stock, canid evolution branched in several directions. One branch, the Hesperocyaninae, flourished early and later disappeared. Another, the Borophaginae, explored everything from lightly built generalists to heavy skulls and powerful jaws. A third branch, the Caninae, eventually produced every living wolf, fox, jackal, and domestic dog. Three branches, one inherited foundation. Very different outcomes, tested across millions of years and an entire continent. This was not a straight road toward the modern wolf. It was a family of experiments, most of which no longer exists. Most of those experiments did not survive. The Hesperocyanines were the first canids to flourish, spreading across North America for millions of years before disappearing as other canid lineages expanded. Among the Borophagines, some lineages pushed toward something almost unrecognizable as a dog: heavy skulls, blunt teeth, and jaws capable of processing bone. Not every Borophagine lived this way, but the most specialized forms filled a role closer to a hyena than a wolf, built more for crushing than for long pursuit. Then there were the dire wolves. Popular imagination treats them as oversized grey wolves. Ancient DNA tells a different story. Their lineage separated from living wolf-like canids millions of years earlier and evolved largely in isolation in the Americas. They were not ancestors of modern wolves. Dire wolves disappeared near the end of the Pleistocene. Changing prey, climate, competition, and other pressures may all have mattered, but the exact combination remains debated. Evolution was not moving toward the modern wolf. It was testing many different dogs. Now return to that second silhouette. It was a thylacine, a marsupial from Tasmania that carried its young in a pouch. It was not a canid. Its lineage had been separate from wolves for roughly 160 million years. Yet at a glance, a thylacine skull and a wolf skull can look uncannily alike. Their long snouts, expanded crests, and overall proportions developed along remarkably similar paths. This is convergent evolution, different starting points arriving at similar functional solutions. But the resemblance has limits. Parts of the skull remain distinct. Below the head, the thylacine's body followed a different anatomical history, and researchers still debate how closely its hunting life matched that of a wolf. The skull converged. The animal did not become a wolf. Elsewhere, another separate experiment produced the so-called bear dogs. Despite the name, many later forms were heavier and more flat-footed than true pursuit canids, their movement closer to a bear's than a wolf's stride. Among living canids, the blueprint keeps splitting into new versions. Grey wolves and African wild dogs lean strongly into pursuit and cooperation, following prey in coordinated groups across open ground. Red foxes take a more flexible path, changing their hunting style with the landscape and often working alone. Arctic foxes and fennec foxes push the same basic foundation toward opposite climates, one conserving heat and the other releasing it. Maned wolves and bush dogs bend the shape in stranger directions. The maned wolf stretches its legs to move and see through tall grass. The bush dog shortens its body and limbs to travel through dense forest. The Ethiopian wolf narrows the strategy again, specializing on highland rodents while retaining the long muzzle and efficient legs of a canid. There is no single modern dog shape. There is a flexible system, repeatedly adjusted around movement, sensing, habitat, and opportunity. Shape alone does not explain a wolf pack or a hunting group of African wild dogs. That requires something else, a brain able to read other animals. Posture, sound, scent, and small changes in movement all carry information. Group members share food, help care for young, and coordinate pursuit without a spoken command. Not every canid lives this way. Red foxes and maned wolves usually depend far less on group cooperation. The body made pursuit possible. The social brain made coordination possible. Together, they produce something more complex than a fast predator, animals capable of making decisions as a group. One branch of this family did something no other canid has done. It entered human life. Exactly when and where that relationship began is still debated. What is clearer now is that genetically recognizable dogs were already spread across Western Eurasia between roughly 14 and 16,000 years ago, and their diversification had begun even earlier. The newest genomic evidence suggests that these early European dogs drew most of their ancestry from the same eastern wolf progenitor source found in dogs elsewhere across Eurasia. That argues against a completely separate Western European domestication. But it does not settle the deeper question. Scientists still do not know whether wolves entered domestication once or through more than one early process, and the exact source population is no longer represented by any living wolf population. How the relationship began is uncertain too. One widely discussed model starts with tolerance rather than training. Wolves less fearful of people may have lingered near camps and gained access to food. Over generations, tolerance could have created opportunities for cooperation and selection, a plausible pathway rather than a confirmed sequence. But it offers a striking possibility. The first important trait may not have been obedience. It may have been tolerance. Once that relationship began, a new force entered canid evolution, human choice. Natural selection had shaped canids through climate, prey, disease, and competition. Now culture began shaping one lineage too. People favored behavior that made cooperation easier and working abilities suited to hunting, guarding, herding, pulling, and following scent. They also favored bodies that matched local needs and preferences, different sizes, coats, limb proportions, and skull shapes. Evolution was no longer responding only to the natural environment. In domestic dogs, survival and reproduction were increasingly influenced by human decisions, made on a much faster cultural timescale. The result sits in plain view. A Chihuahua and a Great Dane, a Dachshund built low to the ground, and a Greyhound built to open into a full sprint. A Bulldog's compact skull beside a Mastiff's massive frame. All belong to the same domestic lineage. Some enormous visible differences can be strongly influenced by a small number of genetic regions. A variant associated with IGF-1, for example, is a major contributor to small body size across many breeds. Skull shape, limb length, coat, and behavior involve other genes and combinations of genes. Domestic dogs are arguably among the most morphologically diverse land mammals alive today, descended from ancestors far more uniform in form. That diversity also carries a cost. When selection repeatedly pushes a body toward an extreme, inherited health problems can follow. Return to the silhouettes. A wolf still wild, an early canid long extinct, a bone-processing hunter that vanished, a thylacine, a marsupial that only looked like a dog, and a domestic dog waiting beside a human doorway. Evolution kept finding the dog-like shape, testing it, abandoning it, and rebuilding it. But only one version crossed that doorway. From then on, evolution had a partner. And that partnership is still shaping dogs today. Their bodies and behavior now carry the history of both nature and human choice. Which animal should we follow next?